I read an interesting article in Art News magazine. The article is online and there is a link to it in the description of this video. It is about showing your work in your studio. Now, this article focused on established artists who are selling their work to collectors and showing the work to museum curators. Most of us aren't there, at least not yet, but the same stuff applies. I think it's a good idea to have a process for showing your work. Let me tell you about mine. I, like a lot of you, have a studio in my home, but I want people to feel like they're coming into a professional environment, not just the home of a person who likes to take pictures. So, when I answer the door, I smile big, I shake their hand to get started. Then I have them come right into my dining room table, which is the first room inside the house. I keep the place tidy, and I'm not taking them past bedrooms and things like that. And I offer them chilled bottled water. And then we sit down and I have several portfolios in the form of magazines and books and a couple of example wedding or portrait magazines. I have those over to the side though, along with my iPad where I keep an updated portfolio. Now, although I have them out, I don't have my client or potential client look through all of those books and magazines. This is actually discussed in the article. You don't want to overwhelm the client with your work. They don't need to see all of it. I usually already know a little something about what they're looking for, but I recap that in a conversation with them, get them talking a little bit, and then I start to talk to them about what I do. And this is the time that I direct them to different photos in my iPad portfolio or in the books and magazines. But again, they don't need to see everything. Every client is different, but I try to show them shots that I think are similar to what they are looking for. But I also show them some of my other work. I feel that makes it seem less contrived, and it shows that I have a breadth of experience and a passion for what I do. So then afterwards, I will usually bring them a little further back into my house to the studio. I have a studio instead of a family room. Again, I keep it all neat and tidy though. This isn't just the house of some girl who has a DSLR. This is the studio of an artist. If anyone asks why I don't have a studio outside the home, I usually say something like, I live this. It's my passion. It just seems appropriate that it's here. And, in truth, many artists live in or adjacent to their studios so that when inspiration strikes, they want their tools, close at hand so that they can go to work. Another thing mentioned in the article is having your work on the walls and talking about it, and even talking about price. I do have my work on my walls, along with a couple of photographs and paintings that were given to me as gifts, but my walls aren't cluttered with them. Again, you don't need to overwhelm your client with your work. Even though we are talking about, your home, you may need to make some concessions if you want it to also be your studio or meeting space. So, have a few photos up and, know what you'd like to say briefly about them if someone asks. A little backstory. That brings me to discussing price. A lot of newer artists haven't really worked out yet how to price their work or how to discuss price. In the article, one of the artists was quoted as saying that she was embarrassed and often lowballed her own work in the beginning. So, work that out beforehand. I usually know at least a little bit about what the client is looking for prior to having them in, so I can start to think about price. But if I'm not comfortable giving them a quote right then and there, I'll tell them that I'd like to get back to them the next day. For example, occasionally a wedding client will come in and say that their wedding is in one place and the reception's in another, and maybe I've never been to one of the places. So I need to do a little research. How far away are these places? How much more complicated is it going to be for me to get, the environmental photos of the reception if I'm not even there until most of the guests have already arrived because I've been at the church getting post-wedding portraits and, do I need an assistant for that or for something else? Will I be needing additional lighting? It's okay to say that. And then get your quote to them when you're comfortable that you know what you're getting yourself into. Of course, all of this will vary from client to client, but I like having a loose process. And from what the curators and gallery buyers talked about in the Art News article, your client likes it when you have a process too. You may or may not have studio space. You may or may not show your work often, but it's still a good idea to have some sort of planned approach for showing your portfolio and for talking to prospective clients, whether it be in your home studio or a coffee shop or wherever. So I'm curious, if you do have a process, what is it? How does it differ from mine? And if you don't have a process, what might it look like?